In our previous lecture, we had talked about the debates on monetary anemia and urban decay. तो monetary anemia वाला तो मैंने dictate कर दिया था. Urban decay वाला I had posed it in the form of a question. लिखने की कोशिश करी है? हो पाया है? या gaps हैं? Because जैसे प्रतीक का मैंने देखा तो जो अर्बन डीके का आइडिया है वो तो उन्होंने बता दिया है, काउंटर आर्ग्यूमेंट्स में दिक्कत हो रहा है. तो ऐसा प्रॉब्लम बाकी लोगों को भी हो रहा है. शैल आई डिक्टेट और शैल वी मूव फॉरवर्ड? Patient and give the heading. Theory of urban decay. देखो, the theory of urban decay was proposed by historians such as D.D. Kosambi and R.S. Sharma, who invariably linked it to the broader framework of Indian feudalism. Next point, write down. R.S. Sharma suggested that India witnessed urban decline in two phases. Firstly, from the 4th to the 5th centuries CE, brought about by the decline of India's trade with Rome and the onset of Punas in Central Asia, who disrupted India's external trade. Next, the second phase of urban decay set in from the 6th century onwards till urbanization finally began reviving from the beginning of the 11th century onwards. From the beginning of the 11th century onwards. Stop. This phase of deurbanization has been linked to political instability After the disintegration of the Gupta Empire, political instability. After the disintegration of the Gupta Empire, the rise of feudalism and a serious case of monetary anemia. Serious case of monetary anemia. It has been argued that this particular phase of urban decay was much more deep-seated and permanent as compared to the earlier phase. Where the decline of Indo-Roman trade had been compensated by a rise of India's trade with which region? Which part of the world? Southeast Asia. The rise of India's trade, where the decline of Indo-Roman trade had been compensated by the rise of India's trade with Southeast Asia. With Southeast Asia. ठीक है? नेक्स्ट हमको क्या देखना है? The different evidence that has been provided to support this idea of urban decay by R. A. Sharma and other Marxist historians. Write down. Give this subheading: evidence to support the idea of urban decay. First, literary evidence. याद है क्या क्या बताया था कल? The Brihat Samhita of Varamihir, the Ramayana of Valmiki and the Raghuvansham of Kalidas. All of them paint a picture of either declining urbanization or made a prophecy of declining urbanization in the future. Write down. The Brihat Samhita of Varamihir prophesizes a gloomy picture for the future, characterized by the decline of urbanization, state power, and the degradation of the society. And the degradation of the society. Second, right. Likewise, the Ramayana and Raghuvansham both present the picture of Ayodhya in decline following the exile of Rama. Following the exile of Rama. ठीक है? Next, right. Archaeological evidence also corroborates the idea of urban decay. The idea of urban decay. Subpoint. This is clearly visible in the context of Vaishali. Clearly visible in the context of Vaishali. Now you can simply copy paste the information from the previous discussion, right? Next subpoint, right. Similarly, inscriptions of this period contain fewer and fewer references to this period contain fewer and fewer references to trade and craft groups. Indicating a decline in their prominence. Next subpoint. The numismatic record of this period contains the undeniable characteristic of debasement, degradation and monetary anemia. ठीक है? This clear? Number 3, the types of urban settlements also underwent a significant transformation with respect to their functional roles. The Nagar महानगर, पुरा, दुर्गा of the earlier period were replaced by Jayaskandhavaras and Tirthas. Stop. These new settlements would no longer be characterized as centers of trade and crafts production. ठीक है, next write 4. This period also witnessed the decline of prominent Buddhist urban centers such as Vaishali, Gavasti, Kapilvastu, Lumbini, Pawnee, etc. This information is attested to by Chinese travelers such as Bai Hin and Huensang. Full stop. It is also reflected in the archaeological record of these sites. ठीक है, lastly you can write 5. This period witnessed a distinct ruralization and feudalization of the society. Characterized by rising vertical stratification, rigidity, ritualization, and Brahmanical domination of the society, of the society. There was a sharp decline in the position of the Vaishyas, marked growth in untouchability, and rising restrictions upon women. Next point, write down. Such social changes, such social changes are reflected in the contemporary Puranas, normative legal texts, such as the Mitakshara of Vigyaneshwar and Dayabhag of Jimutvahana, as well as contemporary historical records such as Al-Biruni's Kitabul Hind, such as Al-Biruni's Kitabul Hind, and कल्हनाज, कल्हना ने क्या लिखा? राज तरंगिनी, कल्हनाज राज तरंगिनी. ठीक है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल इस पीरियड का एक पुराण है नोन एज दी Brahmavaivarta Puran. It mentions the existence of as many as 100 mixed jatis. Okay, so that means proliferation of castes was going on because of the horizontal expansion of the mainstream society. As new groups such as tribals were being incorporated into the mainstream society, they were being assigned a particular rank within the Varna system. This made the Varna system very complicated, and therefore there was a need for the invention of a new social status. तो अब 4 वर्नाज ही हो सकते हैं, तो उसमें इन्फिनिट डिवीजन तो नहीं पॉसिबल है. Therefore sub categories were made within each varna, and these sub categorizations were known as castes or jatis. This process had started as early as the post-Mauryan period, but by this point of time as many as 100 mixed jatis were being mentioned in the normative religious literature such as Brahmavaivarta Puran. Similar kind of information you are going to find in all the other kinds of literary texts of this period as well. Clear? Sure. Similarly, the Rashtarangini of Kalhana mentions the existence of 64 jatis. The Kitabul Hind of Al-Baruni mentions the existence of 8 different castes of untouchables. Or Antyaj castes. Similarly, these texts, especially the Kitabul Hind, mentions the extremely poor condition of women who were subjected to various social evils such as child marriage, parda, ban on widow remarriage, lack of inheritance rights to women, sati, and some new social evils such as the practice of Johar, that is communal suicide in times of war, right, by women. क्या पर्दा 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 मतलब वेलिंग कि बाहर जाएंगी लेडीज तो अपना चेहरा नहीं दिखाएंगी, घूंघट डाल के चलेंगे, दैट इज द आइडिया. ठीक है, दिस ऑल indicates the rising seclusion, isolation and exclusion of women from all mainstream activity. Political participation declining, participation in education declining, say in economic affairs declining. Women were being objectified more and more. Their subordination to men was now being confirmed by such texts as well. ठीक है, तो ये सारी चीजें इन टेक्स्ट्स के अथॉरिटी के ऊपर बेस्ड है. क्लियर? What does all of this indicate towards? Towards urban decay, because urban society में you have an open society. Feudal society में there is a need to hierarchically arrange the society very strictly so that the surplus that is being generated from the bottom levels can travel up predetermined channels right to the main person who is consuming all those resources, the feudal lords or the Brahmin priests or the various temples etc. तो उसका कोई deviation नहीं होना चाहिए. That is why such a kind of a feudal social setup was needed during this period of time, and the presence of such a feudal social setup indicates the growing urban decay in the society. This is the correlation that R.S. Sharma has suggested. This much clear? Now, counter arguments. देखो, the theory of urban decay can be challenged on the basis of several grounds. On the basis of several grounds. Number one, recent historiography has challenged the very framework of Indian feudalism this has invariably weakened the theory of urban decay by attacking all the ideological and empirical evidence used to support it. ठीक है? Sub point, historians such as B.D. Chattopadhyay have raised serious doubts on the phenomena of monetary anemia, declining trade, and the Kali Age crisis. By doing so, they have also weakened the case for the theory of urban decay. ठीक है? Next sub point. These historians have also reinterpreted land grants, the rise of bhakti, and the flourishing temple cult in a fresh light, to suggest their integrative role in political formation as opposed to their fragmentary role suggested by R.S. Sharma. As such, full stop, as such, comma, these developments have been linked to the growth of urbanization rather than urban decay. ठीक है? तो One counter argument on the basis of recent historiography. Recent historiography क्या बोल रहा है? That the very idea of Indian feudalism is questionable. Why? Because all the pillars used to support it are invalid. Monetary anemia नहीं हुआ. Declining trade not witnessed. Kali age crisis and imagination of the early Marxist historians. And these very ideas were being used to support the idea of urban decay as well. Thus, by bringing these ideas into question, the theory of urban decay itself has been brought into question. Land grants, the rise of bhakti and temple cult had been used by the traditional Marxist historians in order to suggest the idea of political fragmentation, which had created the conditions for rising feudalism and de-urbanization. इन historians ने क्या बोला है? That they were not responsible for political fragmentation, rather they played an integrative role in political formation. They led to the expansion of the state society into new areas and thus became a conduit, a medium for urban growth rather than urban decay. Is this much clear? Second right. The literary evidence of this period presents a mixed picture. Presents a mixed picture. ठीक है, तो जो कंटेंट है दैट मे इंडिकेट द रियलिटी ऑफ अर्बन डिक्लाइन, बट वी हैव सम कॉन्ट्रास्टिंग कंटेंट ऑल्सो. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, इन द दरिद्र चारुदत्तम, वसंत सेना इज पोर्ट्रेड एज अ रिच कोर्टिजन इन द फ्लरिशिंग सिटी ऑफ उज्जैन, राइट? So that means that Ujjain was definitely flourishing during the Gupta period, right? Similar case is made by Kalidas in the Meghdutam. Once again he describes Ujjain. Then Kalidas also writes about cultured, extremely wealthy men about town. They were highly educated, highly stylized, etc. They were known as kamarkars, right? So that also indicates the presence of a flourishing urban environment. Gupta period also talks about a large number of foreign dignitaries and traders visiting the rich cities. That is also contrasting information, completely opposite to the picture of urban decay that R.S. Sharma was suggesting. Secondly, do you think that such a huge literary output can ever emerge in a completely feudal setup, in the rural setup? हो सकता है? नहीं हो सकता है. इस आउटपुट को बनाने के लिए यू नीड दी करेक्ट कंडीशंस, कंड्यूसिव एनवायरनमेंट, और वो कहाँ पे मिलता है? इन सिटीज with royal patronage, where the kings have the wherewithal to provide patronage, support these kinds of literary personalities, right? So this also indicates the incompatibility of R.S. Sharma's idea with the presence of such kind of literature. Okay? This was the Gupta age was after all the classical age of Sanskrit literature. Now that Sanskrit literature was attaining its classical stage, that did not match with the idea of urban decay. Okay? Write this down. On the one hand, authors such as Shudrak, Bhash, BHAS, and Kalidas give vivid descriptions of a flourishing urban environment, urban environment. In cities such as Ujjaini and Pataliputra. Next sub point. On the other hand, the very existence of large volumes of classical Sanskrit literature belonging to this period indicates a rich urban setting, with powerful and wealthy kings able to patronize great literary personalities. ठीक है? This clear? Number 3, right? The argument for declining Buddhist centers is also weak. Why? While some of the earlier Buddhist centers declined, definitely some other ones began to emerge and grow substantially, such as Nalanda, Sarnath, Udantpura, Vikramshila, Somapura, Jagdalla, etc. Right? While some earlier Buddhist centers declined, new ones emerged to replace them. Stop. Next point. The Buddhist Mahaviharas at Nalanda, Sarnath, Udantpura, Vikramshila, Somapura, Jagdalla, etc. gained international renown during the early medieval age. ठीक है? Full stop. Apart from these centers of Buddhist learning, comma, several new ones also emerged. Can you name some? पुष्पगिरी, रत्नागिरी, लतागिरी, उदयगिरी in Odisha region, Vallabhi in Gujarat, Kashi in UP, Mathura also in UP, हाँ हाँ महाराष्ट्र में भी है बट रत्नागिरी एक ओडिशा। शारदा पीठ इन कश्मीर, एन्नायरम एंड कांचीपुरम इन तमिलनाडु, मान्यखेत इन कर्नाटका, नागार्जुनाकोंडा also you can write, but नागार्जुनाकोंडा actually सातवाहना पीरियड से फ्लरिश कर रहा था. इट कंटिन्यूड टू फ्लरिश इवन ड्यूरिंग द इक्ष्वाकु रूल, काकतिया रूल एटसेट्रा. उसको भी आप लिख सकते हो. नागार्जुनाकोंडा इन आंध्रा, ये कांचीपुरम. एन्नेयरम कांचीपुरम, एन्नेयरम चोला पीरियड, कांचीपुरम पल्लवा पीरियड. Right? Next point, such a large number of grand educational institutions, such a large number of grand educational institutions could not have been sustained, in the backdrop of urban decay, the backdrop of urban decay. ठीक है. नेक्स्ट राइट. लिखो. साउथ इंडिया in fact underwent its second urbanization, during the early medieval age, a large number of major cities such as Mahabalipuram, Kanchipuram, Puhar, Tanjore, Panji, etc. flourished. Full stop. Subpoint. This period also witnessed the emergence of powerful kingdoms such as the Pallavas and Cholas in the deep south. The deep south. ठीक है? Next, right, conclusion. क्या conclusion? So, not a universal phenomenon. To some extent, deurbanization took place. It was not a universal phenomenon. It was not as serious as suggested by R.S. Sharma. There were a number of regional variations. It was not a simultaneous phenomenon. ठीक है? ये लिखना है. देखो. On the basis of the above arguments and counter arguments, on the basis of the above arguments and counter arguments, comma, it may be concluded that the process of urban decay was not a universal one. Not a universal one. Stop. Next point. There were distinct regional and temporal variations. Regional and temporal. Temporal means time based. ठीक है? Temporal variations. Stop. As such, the theory of urban decay as suggested by R.S. Sharma is no longer considered valid. Instead, urban settlements of the early medieval age presented a diversified picture. Right? Here, this is the theory of urban decay. Next, continuing with our discussion on early medieval age, our next topic is going to be the tripartite struggle. As the name suggests, this was a struggle between three parties. Time period क्या है इसका? Dates to 10th century CE. Who were the three parties involved? The Gurjar Pratiharas of Western India. Their core region was Rajasthan and Gujarat. Palas of eastern India, that is Bihar and Bengal, and the Rashtrakutas of the Deccan region and parts of central India was their core region. What were the important factors responsible for this conflict? Why were they fighting? They were fighting for the city of Kannauj. Why Kannauj? Yeah, strategic location. Why strategic? Trade and commerce, from the perspective of commerce, not so much. See, till the Gupta period, Patliputra was considered as the imperial capital of India. Since the Mauryan period, the city of Patliputra had enjoyed the status of the political center of an all India empire. However, this picture had changed during the post-Gupta period. Powerful rulers had ruled from Kannauj, such as Harshvardhan, Yashodharman, etc. As such, the city of Kannauj had become the symbol of royal power, the symbol of imperial prestige. And this meant that the rule of no empire would be considered universal until and unless they controlled the city of Kannauj. Secondly, the city of Kannauj would also have given any power who controlled it command over the Ganga Yamuna Doab region. Right? What is the significance of the Ganga Yamuna Doab region? It is extremely fertile as well as extremely populous, right? So that means it had a large tax base as well, and it was generating a huge amount of surplus. Any power who controlled the Ganga Yamuna Doab region would enjoy all the economic benefits arising out of it. Another reason why they were fighting against each other. See, all these powers were trying to expand their influence. For that, what is required? Material resources are required. Main source of material resource during this period of intense warfare was not horses, not territory also, rather tribute and loot. Okay, war booty. So they were fighting for war booty and the right to collect tribute. This would have strengthened them and weakened their opponents. Okay. Thirdly, they were competing against each other for another important region, another strategic region, not Gujarat. इन तीनों powers के बीच में the region of Malwa. Why do you think they were competing for Malwa? Is it a very fertile region? हाँ, कनेक्टिविटी प्रोवाइड करता है किसके बीच में? It is in the center of India, so it connects different parts of the subcontinent. During this point of time, connecting the two coasts was becoming increasingly important. Kyun? Because at this point of time, India was created with Arabia, also with Southeast Asia as well. Whoever controlled the region of Malwa could control the trade of the entire subcontinent and as well as control India's overseas trade also. Okay? So it's important trade routes. And another reason of slightly lesser significance, क्या? Family feud में transform हो चुका था. These people had been fighting against each other for a long period of time. किसी की भी एक complete victory नहीं हो रही थी. As a result, defeats, counter defeats, humiliation, revenge, etc. all these emotional factors also contributed to this conflict. So emotional factors also played an important role. Further, this period was also witnessing some other developments, some important socio-economic and political changes. आर एस शर्मा ने क्या बोला है, इस पीरियड में क्या हो रहा था? फ्यूडलिज्म हो रहा था, राइट? नाउ the very word feudalism contains the word feud. Feud का मतलब क्या होता है? झगड़ा, warfare. Feudal lords are essentially warlords. Now, how were the feudal lords justifying their role, the role that they were playing within the state and society? That they are the defenders of the state and society. तो अपने रोल को जस्टिफाई करने के लिए what are they going to do? They are going to try to get as much of the budget attributed to military purposes, right? And वो justify करने के लिए क्या करना पड़ेगा? बार बार पंगा लेना पड़ेगा. Warfare becomes necessary. तो feudalism and warfare के बीच में a positive feedback loop had emerged. More the warfare, stronger the feudalism, stronger the feudalism, more the warfare. Clear? Sure. Another prominent feature of this period was land grants. Who was giving land grants? Kings, other feudal lords. And who was getting land grants? Feudal lords and priestly class, temples, etc. Right? So the recipients of land grants or the grantees, what did they want? They wanted more and more land to be granted to their section of the population. And how are the kings going to get more land? Through territorial conquest. And this drive for territorial conquest was leading to warfare. Such groups were present in all three kingdoms. Therefore, continuous territorial expansion was a need, was a political necessity for all three empires of this. Okay? These are the important factors for this tripartite struggle. Now, outcome क्या हुआ? The tripartite struggle developed in various phases. Two distinct phases we can identify. During the first phase, what happened? Rashtrakutas dominated for lengthy periods, but they were unable to establish their complete dominance by uprooting their adversaries. Okay? And what was the result of this? Their adversaries, although they were weaker, they always presented a challenge to the Rashtrakutas, which they had to continuously compete against. Okay? And what was the result of this? The ultimate weakening of the Rashtrakuta power towards the end of the 9th century. So the Rashtrakutas did not disappear, but they receded to their core region. And during the second phase, competition was primarily witnessed between Pratiharas and the Palas. Okay. Ultimately, the Pratiharas were able to install a puppet ruler in Kannauj permanently. So the Pratiharas won. However, their victory was an empty victory. Why was it an empty victory? A Pyrrhic victory? No, Pratiharas ultimately they emerged as victorious, but their victory ultimately proved to be an empty victory. कोई फायदा नहीं हुआ इसका. What was their grand objective? कन्नौज पे अपना रूल एस्टैब्लिश करना है, so that they can enjoy legitimacy as a major all India empire. They should be able to establish their command over the Ganga Yamuna Doab region. They should be able to bring Malwa under their control. They should be able to collect war booty and tribute from the defeated powers. They should be able to legitimize their rule further by reciprocating their relationship between with the feudal lords as well as the priestly class, by expanding their empire further, by rewarding them with land grants. But ultimately हुआ क्या? Due to the almost 200 years of warfare, all the three empires exhausted their manpower as well as material resources. So they emerged as exhausted, laggard, weak polities. And what was the result of this? एक डेडली कॉम्बिनेशन इमर्ज हो रहा था इसके साथ, दैट वाज फ्यूडलिज्म. एंड फ्यूडल लॉर्ड्स का नेचुरल टेंडेंसी क्या है? टू compete not only against other feudal lords, not only against other kingdoms, but even against their own kings. And this led to the disintegration of the three empires almost simultaneously. Okay? And what was the significance of this disintegration? क्या हुआ इसकी वजह से? There was lack of political unity. Instead of a strong centralized empire, a multi-state system had emerged in the backdrop of the highly feudal socio-economic and political setup. These kingdoms were at constant war against each other. This was leading to political, economic and social instability, which was a characteristic of the Rajput period of Indian history, right? As a result of this constant warfare, none of the Rajput kingdoms were able to establish their complete supremacy over North India. They remained small, weak and almost constantly fighting against each other. And this was happening at a time when a major threat was developing to India's northwest. What was that major threat? The Turkish invaders, right? So India was left largely unprepared for the टर्किश थ्रेट. ठीक है, ने क्या देखा है कि इसका इंपॉर्टेंस क्या है? The emergence of a feudal social and political setup under the Rajputs after the tripartite struggle and the rising vulnerability of the subcontinent to Turkish invasions from the northwest. This is the outcome of this tripartite struggle. Here, now take down a question. Analyze the factors for the tripartite struggle. Full stop. What was its significance in Indian history? First heading you can give factors for the tripartite struggle. देखो, the tripartite struggle was an intense period of internecine warfare, INTERNICINE, intense period of internecine warfare. इंटरनेसिंग मतलब अनसीजिंग बट पीरियोडिक, एक लड़ाई होगी, थोड़ी देर के लिए पीस रहेगा, दोबारा लड़ाई होगी. ठीक है, इंटरनेसिन वॉरफेयर बिटवीन थ्री पावरफुल एम्पायर्स, namely the Gurjar Pratiharas of Western India, the Palas of eastern India and the Rashtrakutas of the Deccan region. Full stop. They fought various wars against each other for almost 200 years between the 8th and 10th centuries for the following reasons. Number 1, Kannauj. With the decline of the Gupta Empire, the political center of India had shifted towards the west, primarily to Kannauj, especially after the destruction of Patliputra in a series of fires. And the unification of North India by Harshvardhan with his capital at Kannauj. Full stop. Therefore, Kannauj more than any other city had emerged as the symbol of imperial prestige. Full stop. The rule of no power was considered universal until it controlled Kannauj. Okay. Next sub point within this Kannauj point only. Control over Kannauj was essential for consolidating control over the Ganga Yamuna Doab, which was the most fertile and most populous region of the entire subcontinent. Full stop. Political control over this region would have ensured immense economic benefits to the power that controlled it. Power that controlled it. Okay? ठीक है? एक तो ये रीजन है. Second one, right? But two, the desire for war booty and tribute. Desire for war booty and tribute was another powerful motivator. Was another powerful motivator. All three powers were trying to expand their authority, for which large amounts of resources were required. Full stop. As such, war also emerged as an instrument to gain wealth by looting and collecting tribute from one's enemies. ठीक है? Is clear? Next, right, number 3. The region of Malwa was sandwiched between these three powers and was of extreme strategic and economic importance. Point. The power that controlled it could use this region as a launch pad for future invasions against its enemies. Full stop. Next sub point. Malwa also controlled all important trade routes connecting different parts of the subcontinent. Of special importance were the trade routes connecting the coast of Gujarat to the coastal regions of Odisha and Bengal. The coastal regions of Odisha and Bengal. Full stop. Therefore, by controlling Malwa, it would be possible to control the whole of India's internal as well as external trade. Internal as well as external trade. ठीक है? Number 4. A positive feedback loop had developed between warfare and feudalism. One fueled the other. One fueled, F-E-L-L-E-D, fueled the other. Feudal lords were essentially military officials enjoying hereditary land grants with other sovereign powers. Stop. To justify their powerful position within the society and polity, it was their vested interest within the polity and society, it was their vested interest vested interest to expand the scope of warfare. Full stop. Next subpoint. Conversely, rising warfare contributed to the further entrenchment of feudalism. ये पॉइंट क्लियर है ना? What is the relationship between warfare and feudalism? देखो, when warfare increases, trade and commerce increase होगा या decline होगा? It declines. This is going to lead to an influx of metallic currency or a decline in metallic currency. Decline in metallic currency. What is going to happen to military expenditure? Is going to increase. Now, since the state is not in a position to pay its officials in the form of cash salaries, but it has to expand military expenditure, pay their commanders more and more, provide them with the ability to raise soldiers. तो क्या ऑल्टरनेटिव आएगा कैश सैलरीज के? लैंड ग्रांट्स. Right? Now, with expanding land grants, feudalism is going to increase. With declining trade and commerce, the importance of land as an economic resource, that is going to further increase. अब वॉरफेयर किसके लिए होगा? लैंड के लिए. So this is going to lead to territorial warfare, and a vicious cycle is going to emerge as a result. So more the warfare, more the feudalism, more the land grants, and thus more the warfare. Clear? So this is the cycle that is going to, वही हमने बात करी है यहाँ पर. Number 5 write down. The expansion of land grants also played an important role. In facilitating the tripartite struggle. Full stop. It was in the interest of the grantees to expand their estates, which necessitated further conquests. And could the kings have ignored the interests of these land grantees? क्यों नहीं इग्नोर कर सकते थे? Because the kings themselves were dependent upon them for military support as well as political religious legitimacy. Okay? Write down. Next point. The kings were not in a position to ignore these demands, since they were materially and ideologically dependent upon these grantees. Okay? Clear है? Number you can write. Emotional component. Write down the emotional component also played an important role in sustaining the tripartite struggle. Full stop. Sub point. The rulers of these three empires inherited the legacy of a powerful and proud military tradition, as well as enmity against their rivals. Full stop. Next sub point. The inability of these powers to subdue the others led to the rising frustration fueled by an intense feeling of humiliation and revenge. Full stop. As such, comma, the politico-economic struggle was gradually transformed into an emotional dynastic struggle. What would every young prince of these three powers dream of? मैं बड़ा होकर क्या करूंगा? इन लोगों को, दूसरे लोगों को हराऊंगा, right? So that had become their chief objective. It had become a part of their identity. This conflict is what had started to define them, and as a result, this is a long period of internecine warfare. Clear? So these are the factors. Next subheading you can give: consequences. The tripartite struggle was characterized by a continuous shift in the balance of power. ठीक है? Next point. All three participants enjoyed supremacy over the others for short periods of time. For short periods of time. Up. Next point. None of these powers were able to find a permanent solution to the conflict by completely subduing the others. By completely subduing the others. Full stop. Next point. As a result, the conflict continued for a long period of time. For a long period. Without any satisfactory resolution. Without any satisfactory resolution. Resulting in almost constant warfare. Almost constant warfare. ठीक है? Next point लिखो. Ultimately, the Gurjar Pratiharas succeeded in establishing their control over Kannauj towards the end of the 10th century. Towards the end of the 10th century. Stop. However, it was an empty victory. Was an empty victory. Stop. Next point. Due to the 2 centuries of constant warfare, due to the 2 centuries of constant warfare, comma, all 3 powers had effectively exhausted their precious human and material resources. Their precious human and material resources. Full stop. As such, all of them had become hollow shells of their former glory. Of their former glory. Hollow shells of their former glory. So they had been weakened systematically over time. They had been engaged in a long war of attrition against their enemies, and although the Pratiharas emerged as victorious in the end, this was an empty victory. केवल बाहर से superstructure of the empire बचा था. From within, the empire had almost rotten to the core. Had almost become rotten to the core. ठीक है? Next point, write down. In association with the growth of feudalism, in association with the growth of feudalism, comma, a deadly recipe for imperialism was prepared. Full stop. Considerably weaker as compared to their predecessors. Considerably, full stop, उसके बाद considerably weaker as compared to their predecessors. The rulers of all three powers were unable to contain the progressively stronger centrifugal forces associated with feudalism. Full stop. Next point. Thus, all three powers disintegrated almost simultaneously. क्लियर है इतना? नेक्स्ट पॉइंट लिखो. The disintegration of these three empires contributed to the emergence of a multi-state system characterized by constant warfare, political instability, economic decline, and social decay. ठीक है? Constant warfare, political instability, economic decline and social decay. Next sub point लिखो. This was the characteristic picture of the Rajput period. This was the characteristic picture of the Rajput period. In brackets you can write 10th to 12th century CE. ठीक है? Next sub point. The Rajputs remained divided upon lineage and regional basis. Full stop. They fought continuously against their immediate neighbors, and this led to rising feudalism, and the inability to consolidate and expand their rule. Consolidate and expand their rule. ठीक है? Next point. As such, North India was left without a strong power to defend it against any external threat. Against any external threat. Next point. As it so happened, comma, at this very stage, a major threat was emerging on India's northwest frontier. Namely, the Turks. Namely, the Turks. कौन Turks? पहले Ghaznavids and later the Ghurids. Write down. Next subpoint. Therefore, India was left vulnerable to the Ghaznavid invasions of the late 10th and early 11th century, and subsequently conquest by the Ghurids during the late 12th, early 13th century. Conquest by the Ghurids during the late 12th and early 13th century. ठीक है? Conclusion में क्या लिखोगे? That although the tripartite struggle was unable to be resolved in a consequential manner, it definitely played a very important role in the future historical development. It contained the seeds for not only the rise of the Rajput period, but also Turkish invasions and Turkish conquest in the future. Write down. While the tripartite struggle itself did not have a consequential conclusion, comma, it played an extremely important role, in further historical development. ठीक है? Full stop. It became an important factor for the emergence of the Rajput period, followed by Turkish invasions and conquests. Followed by Turkish invasions and conquests. Okay? So this is the tripartite struggle. Now, one other aspect of the history of this period is the growth of culture, right? And within this, we need to focus specifically upon the contribution of the Rashtrakutas. UPSC 2 बार क्वेश्चन पूछ चुका है और दोनों बार कंट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ राष्ट्रकूटास टू कल्चर, आर्ट एंड लिटरेचर यही पूछा हुआ है. इसके बारे में हम बात करेंगे. जो अदर इंफॉर्मेशन है रिगार्डिंग द पालास एंड प्रतिहारास, आई विल प्रोवाइड दैट इन द फॉर्म ऑफ अ हैंडआउट. तो बताइए, आर वी familiar with the contribution of Rashtrakutas to the growth of art, literature and religion or not? कुछ पता है, कोई आइडिया है या नहीं है? लिटरेचर अमोघ वर्षा और पंपा पोन्ना रन्ना, राइट? तो लिटरेचर में वी सी several developments, growth of Sanskrit literature also and growth of Kannada literature also. We see the growth of Brahmanical literature also and the growth of Jaina literature also. ठीक है? आर्ट में आर्किटेक्चर, पेंटिंग, कल्चर, राइट? ये किस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में हमको देखने के लिए मिलता है यहां पर डेवलपमेंट? caves at Ellora and Elephanta, find specimens of cave architecture also, cave paintings also and sculptural art as well. Further, we see the development of Dravidian architecture in the form of the temples at Rameshwaram, constructed by Dhruva III after his victory over the Chola ruler Parantaka I. Right? Religion, what do we find? The growth of Vaishnavism as well as Shaivism due to heavy patronage in the form of land grants and construction of temples by the kings. We also see the growth of Jainism, especially under Jaina monarchs such as Amogh Varsha, etc. They patronized a large number of Jain scholars and constructed some Jain shrines, temples as well. We also see an atmosphere of religious tolerance. So, although different rulers were practitioners of different faiths, they did not discriminate against the others in matters of royal appointment, court patronage. कोई discrimination नहीं देखने के लिए मिलता था. The Rashtrakuta period was also significant for the growth of Islamic presence in South India. Now, Arab Islamic traders had been coming to the Malabar region from the 7th century onwards. Ever since the emergence of Islam, they were settling over here also, marrying the local women, resulting in the emergence of new communities such as the Moplas. The Rashtrakutas gave them complete religious freedom. They invited Arab merchants to come and settle in their areas, also established mosques, khangas, maktabs, madrasas, etc. So a number of Juma masjids, etc. were established. Right? And this is the grand contribution of the Rashtrakutas to the field of art, literature and religion. Clear? Now, अब हमको यही फ्रेमवर्क यूज करके थोड़ा और एक्सपैंड करना है, कुछ और नाम बताएंगे, कुछ और किताबों के नाम देखेंगे, कुछ पेंटिंग्स देखेंगे, कुछ ऑथर्स के नाम देखेंगे. दैट इज टेक डाउन अ क्वेश्चन. Analyze the contribution of the Rashtrakutas to the growth of art, architecture and religion. Sorry, art, literature and religion. Art, literature and religion. तो सबसे पहले आपको इस तरह के आंसर्स में एक शॉर्ट इंट्रोडक्शन लिखना होगा. इंट्रोडक्शन में आप किसके बारे में बात करेंगे? अबाउट द राष्ट्रकूटास, विच रीजन दे बिलोंग टू, टाइम पीरियड, एंड then you have to link your introduction to the rest of your answer, that you are going to be discussing their contribution to the growth of culture. क्या बोल सकते हो? Their period witnessed a significant growth of Indian culture. ठीक है, write down. The Rashtrakutas ruled over a powerful empire covering the Deccan and large parts of central India and the deep south. Between the 8th and 10th centuries CE. They made a grand contribution to the development of art and culture. ठीक है, so this is the introduction. Write down further. Their contribution can be classified under literary, architectural and religious development. पहला सब हेडिंग लिखो, लिटरेरी डेवलपमेंट. राइट डाउन. बोथ संस्कृत and Kannada literature witnessed remarkable growth. ठीक है, पहले संस्कृत लिटरेचर के बारे में बात कर लेते हैं. गिव दिस सब हेडिंग संस्कृत लिटरेचर. Masterpieces such as the Nalachampu were composed by Trivikram. Full stop. Similarly, the Kavirahasya was composed by Hal Yuddha. Further, the Amogh Vritti, a work on Sanskrit grammar, was written by Sakatayana. ठीक है, इसके अलावा नंबर ऑफ संस्कृत इंस्क्रिप्शंस वर आल्सो कंपोज ड्यूरिंग दिस. यू मे वांट टू ऐड इट इफ यू वांट. तो ये हो गया संस्कृत लिटरेचर. नेक्स्ट वी कम टू दी कन्नड़ लिटरेचर. राइट डाउन. दिस वाज द seminal era. This was the seminal era of the emergence of Kannada literature. So the Rashtrakuta period has the same significance for Kannada literature as the Sangam period has for Tamil literature and the Gupta period has for Sanskrit literature. Okay? That means Kannada emerged as a classical language with a large number of completely indigenous and original works being produced on new themes by indigenous authors. शुरुआत किससे होती है? Probably the greatest of the Rashtrakuta rulers in the cultural sense, that is Amogh Varsha. He is said to have composed the first work of Kannada poetry. नाम क्या था इस किताब का? कवि राजमार्ग. So write down. With the composition of the Kavi Rajmarg by Amogh Varsha, Kannada literature emerged out of the shadow of Sanskrit literature to attain the status of a classical language. A classical language emerged out of the shadow of Sanskrit literature to attain the status of a classical language. Okay. Further contributions to the growth of Kannada literature were made by the famous Kannada Trinity. So three famous Kannada scholars of this period, Rashtrakuta period. कौन? Pampa, Ponna and Ranna. Pampa, Ponna and Ranna. ठीक है. So This is the contribution to literature. Next, art and architecture. Art and architecture. Art and architecture attained the stage of sublime grace with the excavation of monumental caves at Ellora and Elephanta, which contain magnificent specimens of monolithic rock cut architecture, cave paintings, rock cut architecture, cave paintings, and sculptural art. Full stop. Next point, at Ellora, the most famous structure कौन सा है? Which temple? The Kailashnath temple is the Kailashnath temple, which is considered to be a perfect blend of art and science. इसके बारे में हम पहले बात कर चुके हैं ना, बताया इसके बारे में, नहीं बताया? और बात करी है हमने that it is a monolithic rock cut temple caved out of a hillside. It has been given the form of a complete Dravidian temple, complete with a Nandi shrine, a Gopuram, Dwarpalas at the entry gate, Prakaram covered in a lot of sculpture, a raised platform जिसमें camels, horses, lions के images बने हुए हैं, गंधर्वा images बने हुए हैं, a central plinth rectangular pillar which is also highly carved. It appears to be in motion. ये सब बताया हुआ है ना, आई एम श्योर कि इसके बारे में हमने बात करी हुई है. Then further right, other significant temples at Ellora include रावण की खाई टेम्पल, दशावतार टेम्पल, रावण की खाई टेम्पल, दशावतार टेम्पल, नीलकंठ टेम्पल, देवदर टेम्पल, DVDAR, देवदर टेम्पल, etc. Full stop. Next point. The caves at Elephanta contain a large number of religious sculptures, primarily associated with Shaivism, including most famous specimen कौन सा है? The Trimurti, including the Trimurti. एंड अनदर नोटेबल फीचर क्या है इसका, that there is a remarkable similarity between the sculptures at Elephanta and Ellora, indicating even the possibility of shared craftsmen. ठीक है, maybe the same craftsmen worked at Ellora also and then later at Elephanta. Write down. The remarkable similarity between the Elephanta and Ellora sculptures indicates the possibility of shared craftsmen. ठीक है, next right, next sub point. The cave paintings at Ellora are they the same as the cave paintings at Ajanta पहले वाले पीरियड के, या फिर चेंज है? There is a remarkable transformation. ठीक है, the cave paintings at Ellora represent the evolution of Indian cave paintings from the classical age of Ajanta cave paintings represent the evolution of Indian painting from the classical age of Ajanta towards medieval standards. ठीक है, पेंटिंग्स में there was a remarkable transformation, classical से medieval. Classical paintings of Ajanta, what were the features? Use of soft color palette, absence of any jerky movements in the figures, a large amount of individualistic detail. यहाँ पे क्या देखने के लिए मिलेगा? Bold colors are going to be used instead of panoramic paintings covering the entire surface of a wall. Paintings are going to be of smaller size, which are enclosed by a thick border. Jerky movements body में देखने के लिए मिलेंगे, sharp bends of the body, the nose, eyes, other facial features, they are going to have pointed features, gentle features नहीं देखने के लिए मिलेंगे. These are all characteristics of medieval paintings. So now transformation was taking place between ancient and medieval art. ठीक है, write down. Unlike the paintings at Ajanta, these paintings cover, number one, cover themes from not only Buddhism but also Jainism, Vaishnavism and Shaivism. Number two, have a bold and bright color palette. Number three, are not panoramic but enclosed within thick black borders. Representing panel art. Panel art हम उसको बोलते हैं कि एक ही सरफेस पर in different panels different scenes are shown. Panoramas, on the complete panel a single scene is shown, on the complete surface a single scene. Panoramics नहीं है यहाँ पे, panel art है. ठीक है, next right, number 4. These are characterized by the presence of sharp bends in the body, and stylized facial features such as pointed nose, thick lips, pointed chin, and bulging eyes. Bulging eyes. Thick lips, pointed chin, and bulging eyes. Okay? So these are the characteristics of Ellora paintings. So ये हो गया art, architecture, painting, sculpture we have covered. Next we have religion. So give the next subheading. Religion. क्या? Paintings में Arabs का we cannot identify right now. अरब्स में पेंटिंग्स अभी डेवलप नहीं होगा, बाद में डेवलप होता है, स्पेशली आफ्टर द इमर्जेंस ऑफ इस्लाम. पेंटिंग के ऊपर बहुत ज्यादा फोकस नहीं था, रादर द फोकस वाज टुवर्ड्स आर्किटेक्चर एंड डिस्कवरिंग न्यू सिस्टम्स ऑफ ऑर्नामेंटेशन अपार्ट फ्रॉम पेंटिंग. ठीक है. हाँ, रिलीजन में लिखो द राष्ट्रकूटा रूलर्स heavily patronized Vaishnavism and Shaivism to the construction of a large number of temples, full stop. Next point. Additionally, they also patronized Jainism by constructing Jain temples and promoting Jain scholars, especially during the reign of Amogvarsha. Full stop. Next sub point. Although the Rashtrakuta rulers were deeply religious in their personal convictions, they did not discriminate on the basis of religion. And displayed remarkable tolerance. Next point. The Rashtrakuta period. Subpoint. The Rashtrakuta period also witnessed a significant enrichment of Indian diversity due to the growth of Islamic culture. as a result of the influx and settlement of Arab merchants in the Rashtrakuta territory during this period. Full stop. Huh? Influx and settlement of Arab merchants. Stop. They established mosques and educational institutions with royal support. Okay? So this is the contribution of the Rashtrakutas to the growth of art, architecture, and religion. Write down. Conclusion. In this way, the Rashtrakutas made an enduring contribution to the growth of Indian culture. Their period culturally represents the transformation of India from the ancient to the medieval age. Right? So some features belonging to ancient period, some features belonging to medieval period. Both of them are going to be visible during the Rashtrakuta period. Clear? तो ये हो गया है हमारा ट्राइपार्टाइट स्ट्रगल, कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ राष्ट्रकूटा आर्ट टू द फील्ड ऑफ कल्चर, कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ प्रतिहारास एंड palas I will provide you separately. Next we have to talk about origin and rise of the Rajput polity, society, economy, etc. that we are going to do in tomorrow's lecture. Any doubts आज की क्लास में जो हमने कवर किया है? Polity of Rashtrakutas, Palas, that is it is there in your syllabus, but no question has been asked as of now, so I don't understand the utility of covering it in detail. I'll provide you some handout if you require it. ठीक है, अगर चाहिए तो मैं दे देता हूँ, लेकिन बहुत ज़्यादा यूज नहीं है, क्वेश्चन नहीं है. That is the issue. Any doubts, Rutuja? No doubts. चलिए then. Anything else? खत्म करें सेशन को? All right. Thank you then.